the best anti-aging supplement for men is Tongkat Ali. Now, you probably heard about that because there's a lot of social media. Have a look, check out for yourself. There's a huge amount of social media about its role in testosterone. So there's this testosterone debate, and the scientists saying it does work, and some say it doesn't work, and you take the... Well, I'll explain what it does do later on after reviewing more than 100 studies. In fact, the problem is people will be looking at one study, and that one study is not representative of the big picture, but it's much more than just testosterone and altering your testosterone levels, guys. It really is. There is so much more. There are dozens of active ingredients in Tongkat Ali, and I'll give you the details of the actual names of the herbs so you can track them down, but they're on social media. You can get them, buy them through the web and so on. So there are dozens of active ingredients. There are hundreds of ingredients in there, but dozens of active ingredients, and they all work at different layers and levels. And I'll give you one example, testosterone, okay, just to get you started, and I'll go into a bit more depth. But everybody's talking about how it benefits testosterone. Well, it's not like taking testosterone. If you go to a medical doctor and they say, well, you've got low testosterone because you're aging, well, take this, it'll increase it. The problem is it upsets the whole cycling process in the body. And I've got a couple of videos on that. But coming back, what it does do, what Tongkat Ali does, is there's at least 4 different processes by which it alters or rebalances the testosterone in your body. So it's not about getting a huge amount of testosterone, it's about changing the various physiological and biochemical processes in the body to actually get the testosterone back to where you need it to be. And again, I'll get into that later. And so there are so many benefits, not just testosterone, but we also see that the research now is coming out in terms of blood sugar control, diabetes, gout, bone health and osteoporosis. Even a couple of studies are now coming out on osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, right through to some cancers. And there's a huge number of studies to do with cancers at a cellular level and at the animal level. None in human studies yet, but what I'm trying to explain is that Tongkat Ali is so much more than just testosterone. It has these multiple benefits. And as you'll see as we go through it, it's such a simple thing to implement. So today I want to give you a broad focus on Tongkat Ali and aging, and it really starts off simply with what I call grumpy old men. The unfortunate thing is, as we age, guys, we do become a little bit grumpy. We have all these signs and symptoms that make us not as friendly and as nice as we were when we first met our partners and so on. And it's actually linked to something called andropause, or a change in our hormones, particularly testosterone. And what we find is an increase in weakness and fatigue, decrease in muscle mass and bone mineral density, and both of these are linked with frailty as we age, so they're really important to come to grips with it. And the great thing is, virtually all of these things, Tongkat Ali has a role to play. So you see, it's not just this testosterone, it's all those other branches and dozens of other things that it works on. So bone mineral density, we see an increase in impotence, a decrease in libido, and erectile dysfunction. Not something we really want to talk about, but Tongkat Ali can actually help. And an increase with depression to do with grumpy old men, or andropause, anxiety, irritability. Now, for some people, for some men, this might begin at 25 or 30. For most of us, it begins at around about 50, but certainly for almost everyone, all guys that is, at around about 60 to 70, you're definitely seeing signs of this coming in. Anxiety, irritability, that's where the grumpy old men comes in. Increase in insomnia, decrease in memory, and decrease in cognitive function. Your ability just to be able to get through the day thinking clearly and without that brain fog that crops up sometimes. You go, what am I doing in this room? It's not dementia, or it's actually a grumpy old man syndrome. Cognitive function, and of course this all links with quality of life, and there's a decrease in quality of life. And nearly all the studies show that as this kicks in, the quality of life depreciates significantly for older men. And that links with motivation. Now, I should also just suggest here that we know that with andropause, there's not just a change in testosterone levels that I'll show you, but a decrease in your thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, and they're altered. The great thing is, all of these things begin to change once we start to take Tongkat Ali. And why do we go through andropause? Well, the major factor is a decrease in testosterone. Now, decreasing testosterone is a natural phenomenon, and it's really important actually that it does go down. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of 70-year-olds trying to battle for 25-year-old men and so on because they've got so much testosterone. Message is we need it to decrease, but maybe not as much as it does. At the moment, we see that it goes down about 100 nanograms per deciliter per decade. Don't worry about the numbers, it just goes down every decade. But there are certain things that you can do, which I'll explain later, as well as Tongkat Ali, that instead of going down like that, it goes comfortably down like that. How do I know this? It's not just the research for all you guys out there, it's the research for me as well, because I'm in my late 60s, just heading towards 68 at the moment, and I can see and feel the difference and benefits of Tongkat Ali and also the grumpy old men syndrome. My kids and grandkids even tell me that one. So we see the major factors in testosterone, without any doubt, is age. Age, it goes down, and there is a biological, physiological, evolutionary reason that happens. But also factors like weight gain, poor sleep, stress, not enough exercise, particularly resistance and weight training, the heavy weights that you all need to do. And watch my videos on that. It's really critical for healthy aging and avoiding those last 15 years of your life where you're just so frail, you can't do anything. So resistance training, not enough, but also too much exercise. And that's probably not going to be relevant for most of us out there. But these are for the elite athletes. And even when they're 25, if they're doing marathons regularly and real long distance running, cycling and long distance swimming and all those long or extreme sports where it requires hours and hours every day, then they may be decreasing their testosterone as well. Cigarettes, alcohol and drugs, pharmaceuticals, obviously pharmaceuticals can play an important role in lowering testosterone, so it's important to understand what, if you are on any medication, what you need to do. Now, when it comes to Tongkat Ali, it's important to understand that Tongkat Ali can work with and alongside medication, but it's always best to check your health professional that you're working with all the time. So then you've got infections. Recent research on COVID shows that when you get COVID, your testosterone drops. Now, that may be because the other factors that balance out testosterone, cortisol and estrogen, tend to go up. Not sure on that one yet. We know toxins, particularly pesticides, can lower your testosterone. So it's about really taking some simple steps, just reducing your exposure to pesticides in the garden, in the home. Stop spraying those spray cans around and trying to kill the cockroaches, chase after them, get some exercise rather than using toxic chemicals that do affect your testosterone and many other active parts of the body. And of course, poor diet, which I'll go into again a little bit later on. So that stay tuned right to the end, because you get all of the information what to do to make sure your testosterone does increase. By the way, we do have a couple of videos already on increasing testosterone where we mentioned Tongkat Ali, so you can already get an idea of what you can do along with Tongkat. And then of course, what we do know is that when your testosterone lowers, it increases your adiposity. That is the weight around the belly, the visceral fat, the stuff that causes a fatty liver type thing is associated with it. A decrease in insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance. In other words, the inability or the decrease in the ability to be able to get glucose, the sugar in your blood, into the muscle. Now remember, testosterone has an effect on muscle. It also has an effect on getting the sugar into the muscle, out of the blood, where it does the damage, e.g. diabetes. Increases in triglycerides, these are nasty fats, and a decrease in the cholesterol that your body really does need to function properly. It's worth noting, by the way, that testosterone is made out of cholesterol, as is vitamin D. A little bit of trivia there for you. And we see that these then lead to conditions like an increase in diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, and of course cancers and chronic illness. And probably the worst of all is frailty. Those last 15 years, 20 years of your life, not being able to get up and do all the things you need to be doing for all of your life. Tongkat Ali has a definite and very subtle effect on testosterone. Very different if you're taking pharmaceutical grade hormones, pharmaceutical grade testosterone. And why it's so subtle and so much better in that it works at different layers and levels. So to increase the amount of free testosterone, that is the testosterone that's available to be able to use in all the good things testosterone does, to be able to increase that, it works at least 5 levels. And the first is by decreasing inflammation. As I've already highlighted, Tongkat Ali is anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. Both oxidation and inflammation lead to a decrease in free testosterone. So your body's response to an increase, and I've highlighted this already, viruses, for example. If you have a chronic viral attack, which is inflammation, then your testosterone levels go down. I've already mentioned that. But chronic inflammation lowers testosterone. So if we can lower inflammation, it increases testosterone. 1. 2, it decreases sex hormone binding globulin. Just a little bit like a taxi going around in the blood, and it literally has all the testosterone in it and doesn't let it out. What we want to do is open the door of the taxi for the testosterone to get out, to become free testosterone and do the things, the good things that testosterone does. So we want to decrease the sex hormone binding globulin, which is what Tongkat Ali does. The third mechanism is it decreases aromatase. Aromatase is an enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. Now that's very handy for multiple reasons. 1, it helps increase the testosterone levels. In other words, it's not going to be converted or dumped and eliminated as rapidly, but it also stops the development of secondary female sexual characteristics, which is fairly typical of menopause or andropause, which I mentioned earlier, and the development of breasts and so on, associated with literally a decrease in testosterone and increase in estrogen. So it's stopping it from the second part, increasing that estrogen. Now, this is also established with females too in postmenopausal women. There's a couple of experiments where they've used it, where they've had excessive estrogen, and Tongkat Ali in this situation, and I'll have some information on that in another video, Tongkat Ali was able to lower the estrogen and reduce a lot of the excess estrogen symptoms in women, in postmenopausal women. So it has an effect there. It has also an effect on lowering cortisol. Cortisol is the major stress hormone neurotransmitter that affects us, and what we want to do is have this cortisol level as we wake up. It goes up and down depending on the day, and it goes down at night time. But what we don't want it is up here all the time, i.e. increased stress, increased biochemical stress in the body as well. And Tongkat Ali lowers cortisol. It does that by literally through the pituitary gland, reducing luteinizing hormone, and therefore reducing the amount of free testosterone that's produced. Now, on the final aspect here, what we do know is Tongkat Ali does the opposite of the cortisol. It stimulates the pituitary gland to increase luteinizing hormone, to increase the production of testosterone in the Leydig cells, and as a result, you've got more free testosterone. Very different to the situation like pharmaceutical grade testosterone. Pharmaceutical grade testosterone, you get it injected in, or wherever you take it, it goes in, it has a negative feedback loop. So you can increase the testosterone levels much more than using Tongkat Ali. But what it does is it sets up a negative feedback loop. And it basically tells your system over here to stop producing testosterone, because you've got a lot. See, we've got all these receptors in our body for testosterone, and if it's detecting lots and lots of testosterone, then it's saying stop producing. Hence why excessive long-term use of testosterone shrinks the areas of the body, gentlemen, that produce testosterone. Yeah, you can have a guess those areas. So what happens, the negative feedback loop says stop producing testosterone, and then so you always need more and more and more testosterone. It's a vicious loop, which this one, on the other hand, creates a positive loop. Now, there are many studies out there, particularly in cell studies, animal studies, and of course, increasing human and men's studies on it. And one of the studies was on a 57 to 72-year-old. They took 400 milligrams of Tongkat Ali. It increased the testosterone within 3 weeks, and it increased levels of physical activity in the men. So going just beyond, remember, it's not just about testosterone, it's about all those other benefits that I've already highlighted along the way. And another study, 105 men, 50 to 70 years old, for 12 weeks, led to an increase in total and free testosterone, led to an increase in DHEA, which is a precursor to testosterone. So we want to increase DHEA, which leads to an increase in the production of testosterone and free testosterone, a decrease in cortisol, which I've mentioned, an increase in your thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, which often decline as we age as well. And I've already briefly mentioned them. A decrease in fatigue, and getting on to the important part. What are the real outcomes of it? And a decrease in fatigue, increase in quality of life within 2 weeks. And an increase in muscle strength, increase in physical functioning. Now you have to bear in mind, probably the biggest killer as we age is actually inactivity and frailty. So if we can increase that just by a little bit and decrease that frailty, the loss of muscle mass, the loss of bone mass, and of course, it also increases social life. Or in this study, it increased or improved social life, which is a very positive outcome. And you see, it's not, again, not just about testosterone, but what it does indirectly and directly through all those mechanisms I've already highlighted. Tongkat Ali goes a lot further than just balancing out your testosterone. In this study, at 6 months, 45 men, average age 47 years, 200 milligrams of Tongkat Ali. Now, that's a fairly typical supplement. Most people I know take 200, 300, 400, and they're the levels that they use in the studies too. It decreased erectile dysfunction, increased peak power, and if it was combined with exercise, they saw a multiplying effect of the actual benefits. So exercise decreased the erectile dysfunction even further and increased peak power. This is one of the things about Tongkat Ali. It's not just about trying to increase testosterone. It balances out the testosterone and has other multiple benefits around the body. In another study of 5 weeks, 13 men and 12 women. Yeah, there's a half a dozen studies on both men and women jointly, and a couple I'll show right at the end on just women. But 52 to 72 years of age, it increased testosterone, increased free testosterone, which is the testosterone that you want, so that's available to do things around the body in both men and women, in men and women, and it decreased the sex hormone binding globulin. That's the stuff that holds onto the testosterone and doesn't make it available for use as such. And it increased muscular force. In a study of 75 men, 200 milligrams over 3 months, these men had idiopathic infertility. In other words, they didn't know why they were infertile. There weren't any biological, medical, or clinical reasons why they were infertile, and all semen parameters improved, and there was a 14% increase in spontaneous pregnancies over the period of 3 months. Had it gone on longer, they probably would have seen a lot more. But what it's doing is it has lots of properties to help with reproduction, which you'll see in a moment. Antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, testosterone, and a whole raft of these other benefits. So then you go across to some other studies. 40 to 65-year-old men over 12 weeks, increased intercourse success, increased erection hardness, increased sexual health inventory, and on this one, it decreased the aging male health symptoms. So this is literally a scale whereby they measure all the health symptoms of men and women, in this case men, and they found that the men who took the Tongkat Ali decreased on average across the board, globally it's called, their symptoms and symptomology to do with aging. So the stiffness, the soreness, the tiredness, and all those other bits and pieces. In a study of 109 men, 30 to 55 years over 12 weeks, increased erectile dysfunction, increased libido by 14%, 44% increase in sperm motility. So a big parameter in terms of increasing fertility, and an 80% increase in sperm volume. And again, we'll go here to another study of men and women, 200 milligrams. It enhances comprehensive immunity. That was the outcome of the study. They looked at the various immune parameters, inflammation and so on, and they said that the overall immune system of all these people were performing much better. And then another study, 63 men and women who were stressed. So these are people most stressed, most agitated and a little bit anxious, and they found out that supplementing with Tongkat Ali decreased tension, anger and confusion, improved global mood, so they felt better about themselves, increased testosterone, and decreased the hormone that's associated with stress, the decreased cortisol. Other benefits of Tongkat Ali include decreased recovery time and fatigue in athletes, and an improvement in mood in moderately stressed subjects. So you can see the overall benefit that this can have. And then in half a dozen or so studies on women where it was shown to improve menopausal symptoms, primarily because of the balancing of the estrogen testosterone levels, and of course in one study a decrease in postpartum depression and fatigue after childbirth. Again, balancing those hormones out, which it does really well. And then when it comes to the animal studies, which are much more comprehensive and give a lot more detail of it, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of these studies showing an increase in bone mineral density, whole body bone mineral density, a decrease in bone loss, increase in the osteoblasts, which are the cells that put calcium on the bone and build the bone up, and the osteoclasts, a decrease in those. They're the ones that take it off, okay? So they take the calcium and the bone off the bone. And the scientists repeatedly come up with saying this is probably a successful treatment for osteoarthritis and other bone-related conditions in humans. Studies in terms of kidney, decrease in serum uric acid. Now, uric acid is a major player. At low levels, uric acid is a potent antioxidant, really good for you, but at high levels, it becomes a real problem in the case of gout. You've probably heard of that, and I've got a whole video just on gout, so check that one out. And what they find is it decreases, Tongkat Ali decreases serum uric acid, which is great in that condition, a decrease in renal injury, so kidney injury from uric acid, and a decrease in inflammation, decreased fibrosis in the kidney, and a decrease in liver purine synthesis. Now, the purines, if you have gout or you know about gout, you know that you're told to avoid the foods that have purines in them. Well, it's really about rebalancing it all. And that's what's great about Tongkat Ali. It helps rebalance all of these biological, biochemical systems in the body. And it prevented paracetamol kidney damage. All drugs will have negative side effects. And even these drugs you take for headaches and pain and so on often have damaging effects in the kidneys and the liver, and in this case we know that Tongkat Ali helps prevent the damage in the kidney. So it's not just, again, the testosterone estrogen balance in there, it has lots of other antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effects, beneficial effects around the body. Then in terms of reproduction, the animal studies are overwhelming and support what I highlighted earlier on in the human studies, and an increase in fertility, fecundity, which is a reproducing of the population, that, you know, we're able to reproduce a lot more and more successfully, an increase in pup litter. You probably may not be aware, but infertility in the human race has been increasing. So infertility increasing and fertility decreasing, sperm counts, a whole raft of issues in there. So you can see why this is so important. And so increase in pups litter, increase in sperm counts, motility and quality. So all the various parameters to do with sperm counts in these animal studies where they get into the nitty-gritty detail, an increase in semen volume, and an increase in mounting, being able to physically get up, mount and reproduce, and ejaculation. And one of the consistent themes that came through on all of these animal studies, a bit of a mixed quote I've got here, but improve sexual performance and arousal in sexually sluggish old male rats after oral administration. So if you're an old male rat out there and you want to improve your sexual performance and all the other parameters out there from Tongkat Ali, as well as all the other benefits that it can have, I firmly believe that this is a supplement that can really help men over 35 and probably even some women too. But the studies are very, very strong in this. So pass this message on, subscribe below, and share this with your friends.